Okay, good morning to everyone. And it's 12 in Finland, where I'm speaking from. So we are making a start in this very exciting event, Nordic Feminism's Pay Equity in Denmark, Finland and Iceland. So a very warm welcome to everyone who is listening to us today. And my name is Johanna Kantola. I'm Professor of Gender Studies at Tampere University, Finland. And I'm very honored to be the moderator of the event. And in my few starting minutes, I'll first let everyone know what will happen, how we have structured the event, and then I introduce our speakers briefly before I give the floor to them. So we have planned short 5 to 10 minute presentations from the 3 countries where the organizers come from. So from Iceland, Finland and Denmark. And after that, we will have short responses from 2 panelists. And then we go into this open discussion between the 6 participants and potentially with some questions from the audience. And stay with us until the end, because we want to finish with this feminist to-do list, where each participant will add 1 item on this list. And we can all have something to take home with us after the event. So welcome to everyone, and special welcome to our speakers. I first introduce our 3 panelists. And first we'll hear from Sonja Thorbergsdottir, who is the president of the BSRB, the largest federation of employees in the public sector in Iceland. A warm welcome to you, Sonja. BSRB has members who work in the postal services, customs, police, fire departments, healthcare, as well as employees of the government and local municipalities. And about 2 in every 3 of the BSRB members are women. So we're going to hear from Sonja about the situation in Iceland, what we can learn and what some of the challenges might be in relation to advancing pay equity. We then go on to Denmark to hear from Astrid Elkskær Sørensen, who has a PhD in history. And her main areas of research include modern feminism, equality and labor market history in Scandinavia. And she's the author of the book, I'm going to say the name in English as I don't speak Danish, Polite Girls Revolting, which is on pay equity. And she has recently published an analysis of the pay hierarchy in the Danish public sector, dating back to the public sector reform in 1969. So it will be very exciting to hear from Astrid about Denmark. And then our 3rd speaker is Fatim Diarra from Finland. And Fatim is an advocate for gender equality and women's rights, and the chairperson of Nytkis, which is a coalition of Finnish women's associations. And Fatim is also the chairperson of the City Council of Helsinki and the feminist association Unioni, which is the oldest women's rights organization in Finland. And in June 2021, she was elected to the Board of Administration of the European Women's Lobby. And Fatim will tell us about the situation in Finland, which is also very heated as of today and the coming weeks. So it's an exciting set of speakers. And I first give the floor to you. And then I introduce the panelists after the speakers have finished. So over to you, Sonja, now.
Thank you so much. It's so great to be with you here. I have to say, though, I would prefer be sitting on the floor at the United States headquarters, but hopefully next year we'll all be there so we can feed off each other's energy and take the discussion further. Of course, here in Iceland, as we know, there are quite many things that feed into the gender pay gap. But what I want to emphasize here in the few minutes that I have is our discussion about pay equity. So we have equal pay, which has been on the agenda for many years, as you know. But what we've gathered here by statistics is that the main reason for the gender pay gap in Iceland is due to the gender segregated labor market. That is, that the labor market is kind of divided into jobs that are highly feminized, that the majority of the employees within each sector are women. And then, of course, we have on the opposite, where they are highly segregated towards men. So as in most countries, the biggest workplace for all women is within the public sector. So we're talking about health and care and education and etc. And as Joanna mentioned here, I'm the president of a federation of employees within the public sector. And when we were trying to reach a conclusion with our collective agreements in 2020, it's quite common in Iceland that the government steps in and tries to facilitate that we will reach our conclusion. So what happened then was that the government declared that they would submit a working task working on this matter, pay equity especially, and said specifically that its role was to re-evaluate and set out proposals on how we could minimize or eliminate the gender pay gap due to the gender segregated labor markets. So first we had a working group that was kind of gathering together what we know about the situation, and that is what I want to tell you a little bit more about here today. And when the report was published, unfortunately, we haven't translated yet to English, but it should be out soon. And after that, we started an action group, because as we know, these things take time and there's a lot of things that we have to keep in mind. And one of the biggest things is also just changing the culture. So I usually have this picture from an article that was with the New York Times, which I think it describes very well what we're doing here, because the biggest or the key to re-evaluating women's job is through job evaluation. And what we can see through these jobs today is, even though they're demanding the same set of skills or education or whatever the needs are at each time, they are being evaluated in a different way between the feminized jobs and the jobs where men are in majority. And if I don't know if we can send out the slides, but then I put the links to this article and also a little bit about pay equity in New Zealand as well, so people can take a look. Unfortunately, I don't. We haven't translated this, but on the upper or above the two apples, we're talking about the equal pay approach, and then with the apple and the orange, we're talking about the pay equity approach. Because terminology matters, and we have, all of the countries in the world have kind of been approaching equal pay based on that you have to pay equally people who are working almost just the same or then comparable jobs. But there hasn't been a focus point on when people are working in different occupations or evaluating across workplaces. So I think I stole this line from New Zealand rather than Canada to say that we want to compare apples and oranges because they are of the same nutrition. So what we learned in this report, or during the report, is of course that the research indicates that the factors that characterize women's jobs are less valued for their pay than factors that characterize men's jobs. And what we can also see is the only thing that will lead to any results in this matter is proactive measures. So that is also another thing that we were trying to focusing on, how the government in Iceland could be proactive in this regard. And then we also looked into, of course, what has been done already in Iceland. And as many know, we have the equal pay certification. And also we have a job evaluation system by the local authorities in Iceland. And they have their pros and their cons. Of course, they have led us to where we are now regarding the gender pay gap, and it has minimized through the years. but not fast enough. At least that's my thought of it. But the job evaluation by the local authorities, it only covers basic salary. And we know that the gender pay gap mostly arises, at least for the local authorities, in other remuneration. So it's something else than the basic salary. And what we've learned through the experience of the equal pay certification, even though not all have still implemented it, it is an ongoing process, is that it kind of only covers a single employer. So sometimes we say it covers the house. So it's not across the employers or across the labor markets. And also it does not clearly stipulate or it doesn't make a demand on what criteria should be used when the jobs are being evaluated. And also, of course, then it's totally lacking of the kind of both that giving people the tools and the knowledge on how to kind of reevaluate the things that have been hidden or people have not evaluated enough that are kind of linked to women's occupations. And there is also no participation of employees or unions in the process, which we think is crucial that everyone is aboard because we can all learn from each other. And of course, employees know their work the best. So what we learned through international research is that job evaluation is key. But the thing is, job evaluation can also kind of sustain the undervaluation of women's work. So we all have this risk of having gender bias. And the main thing here is to kind of improve the tools that we have through job evaluation and help people realize their gender bias. And what we did also was see what the other countries had done. And I think many people know what the Nordic countries have done and also what the European Union is doing. But we were looking for proactive measures, and we found them in both Canada and New Zealand, who are doing, well, the objective is the same. They want to reach pay equity, but kind of the approach is different. Unfortunately, I don't have much time to go over that here, but there was some link, as I said before, in the slides, and you can also Google pay equity in Canada and New Zealand to see what they're doing. But I think the main thing is that you or these countries have put this at the front of their priorities, and they are taking proactive measures. And that is what I hope for other countries that they will do as well. So as I mentioned at the beginning, this is a long process, and now we have started with the government an action group, and its role is to analyze the problem further and then develop the tools for employers to use in the job evaluation. And we also want to go the New Zealand way and develop a negotiation method. Even though it's similar to negotiations in collective agreements, it's important that you're just going through this process with the only objective of reaching pay equity. And of course, then increasing knowledge and awareness in the society. I hope I haven't gone much over time. I had way too many slides. I wanted to tell you so much, but thank you for now.
That was perfect. Thank you so much, Sonja. And we can continue in the panel and in the discussion. But now over to Astrid.
I just have to get the technique to work. So, first of all, I hope you can see it now.
Yes.
Yes, perfect. First of all, thank you for inviting me, and thank you, Sonja, for this very inspiring talk. And I think Iceland is so fascinating what you are doing right now, and I think what you are describing about the reasons for the lack of pay equality is also very much the case in Denmark. What I will try to do in my talk is trying to give a status on where is Denmark right now, because we don't have the government working to the same extent to solve this problem. But what we have seen in Denmark right now is we really have this strong equal pay movement, and also some very active trade unions. And I will try to focus on that aspect and what their struggle have brought us, and where the debate is right now. And what you see here in the picture is this very huge a picture from a very huge demonstration in Copenhagen this summer, where Kvinderådet were one of the participants, but a lot of women from female-dominated professions went to the street and demonstrated for pay equality. And it was really a fascinating day to be walking down Copenhagen, and even the sun was coming up to meet us. What we are seeing right now in Denmark is a growing care crisis. We are having major problems recruiting, but also getting people to stay in what you could call the welfare professions. We do not have enough kindergarten teachers, we do not have enough nurses or midwives, and so on. And the ones we have are choosing to leave their professions because they are finding the working conditions and their pay to being too bad. So we are right now actually not just talking about equal pay as a questions of justice. We are also talking about equal pay as being the solution to this growing care crisis, where we really are seeing the Danish welfare state being actually threatened, or starting to being threatened by this care crisis, where we don't have enough people to care. And what we also have seen is a growing equal pay movement, where we see a lot of people, especially from the public sector, organizing around making their voices heard and setting focus on the questions of pay equity. And it also resulted in this huge strike from the Danish nurses this summer, who went on strike for 10 weeks for pay equality. They didn't get any concrete action out of it, but what it ended in was that there was established this salary structure committee that had to look into, is the salary in the public sector given reasonably? Do we have pay equality in Denmark? If not, what should we do about it? And do the political sector have a responsibility for this issue? So we are kind of a step behind.
I'm so sorry, Astrid. Are you going through the slides? Because we can kind of see the screen where you have the slides on and it's still on the first one.
Yeah, I tried to shift. It should be shifting. So
now it's changing, yeah?
I just try. Has it shift now?
No, it's still kind of, you haven't put on presenting mode.
Oh.
But I mean, we can see it fine now. If you just kind of click through them, you can follow where you are on the slides.
Are you on the second slide now?
Yes.
Yes. Cool.
But it's not full screen yet. If you can make them full screen, in the bottom right corner should be.
It should be. Strange. Nothing like.
It's also fine like this, we see it.
Yeah, it's okay.
I think it's fine, Astrid. Just you can just carry on. And
yeah, sorry for the technical issue. Yeah, but we established this salary structure committee, and it's still working. So we are all really waiting to see what will come out of this salary structure committee, and it is working behind the scenes, and it's not public, the meetings. So we are all quite of sitting on our hands and waiting to see what will happening. But what we are seeing right now is that this equal pay movement, which are across professions, are still mobilizing, and I think we will see a lot of activities from them when the weather gets warmer. I know they have planned a lot of demonstrations and activities. And what we are also seeing is that they, in Denmark, you can make the citizen proposals. If you get enough signatures, you can put forward a petition to be taken up in the Danish parliament. And they have made a new citizen proposal. They had one in the summer, and they have now made a new citizen proposal that the politicians have to handle to take action on pay equality. And we don't know, it has reached the needed signatures and will be treated in the parliament. So that's also a way to try to make the politicians in Denmark actually take action on the committee and its results. So it's so interesting that what we are seeing in Denmark right now is actually not the politicians trying to take action, but it's actually a demand growing from a growing equal pay movement among the Danish women, especially from the welfare professions. And what we are seeing is silence before the storm, because right now that is not happening so much because the committee is still waiting. The welfare professions trade union are waiting for the conclusions and how the government will react to those. But I think if we are not seeing any as a solution for the female-dominated professions, it is very likely that the collective bargaining, which are coming up here in 2024, will end in a conflict. Not just the nurses were striking last time, but it will also be the other female welfare profession that will be striking. And I'm not sure that the public sector and the welfare state can survive such a huge protest, because we are already seeing that this care crisis is really critical. And I think that we risk that a conflict will really feed this care crisis and make it even worse than we're seeing right now. And the situation in Denmark that I have tried to shortly give an overview over here is mainly about the public sector. And also, if you're following the discussion, it's very much about how the working condition and the pay condition are in the public sector. And it's not because there's nothing happening in the private sector, but it's overall a lot more quiet right now in Denmark. And when they're talking pay, it's mostly equal pay. And they are very much focused on this pay transparency measures, especially in relation to the European Commission's directive of pay transparency and equal pay. But right now, maybe that will change, because the trade union HK, it is the Handel and Kontor, which organize the laboratories, has right now made a new equal pay case against Novozymes, and it's very much about pay equality, because they are saying that the laborants in this medical corporation should have equal pay or pay equality with the technicians, because their argument is that they have the same education, they have the same responsibility, ergo they should have the same pay, but that's not the case. So maybe the private sector will also come into this debate we are right now mainly seeing in the public sector. But it's very interesting what is happening in Denmark right now, and it's kind of like an open window, but also kind of like a breaking point, where everyone is both really nervous, but also really excited about the situation. And I personally is very, very much looking forward to hearing what this commission is going to come out and say about the issue. But it will be this fall, and then I think we will see a lot of discussions about equal pay and pay equality in Denmark. Yeah, and that was a very short resume about Denmark, but thank you, and I'm looking very much forward to the discussion.
Thank you so much, Astrid. And now we move on to Finland. Fatim, please. Fatim, your microphone is not on. At least I don't hear you.
Thank you. How classic that even after 2 years of pandemic and remote working, I'm still not able to put on my microphone when I start speaking. So I also have some slides for you, and I'm trying to share them, and I believe that I was able to do that now. I will just open this a bit so that you will see it a bit better. Sorry, my computer is being a bit slow. It might be that also my computer has a little bit of COVID still left over. But so here we go. I'm trying to show you a little bit of the perspective from Finland in where we stand. And I would already like to thank you all for your presentation that you just held. They were really interesting. And it's clear to me that we're actually tackling the same problems as you guys are. And it's sadly so universal how the work done by women is undervalued in the paycheck. And my mom, she is a nurse and a midwife, and she always says that the fact that someone values you does not pay your rent. It is money that pays your rent. So if we said that you are valued, then it should also show in your paycheck. But so as in Finland, we love numbers and we love statistics. I'm going to first speak to you about statistics. And in Finland, we do this time of use survey. And there, the question of the division of domestic work is something that we see as extremely equal when we discuss gender equality and when we discuss pay equality. It is important since it does not only affect the women's status within the workforce, but it also affects how our pensions are actually built up, and how long our career is and how much pension we're actually able to create for ourselves during the years. And another thing that it also affects is the roles, how different sexes are seeing in the society and what is expected of different sexes and what is seen as the neutral role of doing things. The Statistics Finland has conducted this time use survey for many years, and it's done approximately every 10 years. So the data I'm going to be speaking about today is being collected from 2009 until 2010. And those who participated in this survey kept a diary of their time use during a 2-day period. So they wrote down everything that they did, like 15 minutes did the dishes, 45 minutes watched The Bachelor on TV or whatever, but they noted down every single thing that they did. And then after that, the scientists did some interviews with the people who participated in this survey and went into more detail in what they did. And I must apologize that the data I'm speaking about is binary. So it does not see the multitude of genders and sexes, but I'm sorry that the material is old-fashioned, so it's made in a binary fashion. But hopefully one day we will have more progressive and data that actually shows the reality in how people actually are. So this survey was built because it shows us how the work is divided between men and women, and it also shows how much time different sexes spend on doing unpaid domestic work. The new survey will actually come this year, and we are extremely happy that the new one is coming, since it will be since the study has been done during 2020, during the autumn of 2020, and we know that the autumn of 2020 was time of COVID, and people were mostly a lot of people were remote working. So it's interesting to see that when families were home, what happened? Did they share the tasks more equally, or did they not? Was it still that I have this idea in my head, and I think that it will be true that women still did more work at home, although men and women stayed home together. So what do we know about the reality in Finland 12 years ago? So according to the study that was did, we can see that women do more domestic work than men do. approximately women do 225 minutes of domestic work per day, and men do 153 minutes of domestic work. This means that women are taking much bigger responsibility of the domestic work, although they're working outside of the house, meaning that the workload is not divided equally between the sexes. And something that is quite interesting is that the time used to domestic work by women has increased from the 1980s, but until the 1980s it increased, but then it stayed roughly on the same level throughout the whole millennium. So it's interesting to see what happened then during the pandemic when everyone stayed home and people start doing more housework. And overall, the time used for domestic work has grown throughout the years. And something that is a little bit positive is that the time that men use in domestic work has only slightly increased. And here you can see this some kind of graphs that show us how much time is used on domestic work during the different years. The first color you can see there is the green, and that represents years 2009 until 2010. And you can see there that the amount of domestic work, and then there's the blue one is 1999 until the 2000s, and then the purple one is 1988 until 1987. And there you can also see, so you can see this increase in the amount of domestic work that also women and men are doing. But still, when we discuss domestic work, we can see that it's not divided equally. When women and men do not do the same kind of domestic work in their house. The most common domestic work that women do is cooking, shopping, running errands, cleaning, and childcare. But for men, the most common domestic works then are shopping, running errands, cooking, cleaning, gardening, and pet care. But when we go into more deeper into what kind of domestic work men are doing, we can see that men use more time in renovation, construction, and taking care of different kind of machines, such as cars, motorbikes, boats, and such. But all in all, we can see that even if men and women are working outside of the house the same amount of time, and even earning the same amount of money, women still do more domestic work in the house and still take more care of the other people living in the house, meaning the children. So why do we think that this is such an important tool for us to have good data on how the domestic work is divided? It is important so we can actually compare how things have been changing throughout the decades in Finland, and how different kind of tasks are moved around, or has anything happened. Something that is really interesting is that the amount of time that is used on childcare, it hasn't changed. It is still the women who do the childcare in Finland. And this is something when we compare to it on the Nordic level, Finland is actually, we are really bad in gender equality when we discuss childcare. And in 10 years, you can of course see big changes, but still not so big changes. It means that if the system doesn't change, the division of the tasks in the households, it doesn't change. So other topics that we're in this discussion in Finland at the moment is that we just got our new parental leave reform. Our government made this, and the reform was made because, as I just mentioned, in the Nordic comparison, Finnish men are least likely to use parental leave days. It means that 1/5 of the Finnish fathers don't use any, I underline any, parental leave days, although they could. So now this new reform enables, it doesn't force, which we as a feminist movement are quite sad. It doesn't force, or I would like to say it doesn't offer the men a true opportunity to participate in the childcare. But now this new system, this new reform gives the father or the other parent the opportunity to stay 160 days with the child at home. This reform is also good, progressive in a way that it recognizes that families are not made of one man and one woman, but families are more diverse, and that is something that we see as a positive thing. But then something that I want to mention, I still have a few minutes, so I will have to mention this. During the pandemic, we have noticed that, well, finally, this pandemic has made Finnish people recognize that the work done by nurses and childcare workers and educators is the work that is needed to keep this welfare state moving, to enable our society to work. But as I mentioned earlier, the pay has not followed the value that is given to their work. So now finally there's a threat of a strike. A strike warning has been given, and just today I noticed that 40,000 nurses and caregivers will join this strike if the strike happens, if they're not able to reach a conclusion in the negotiations. And you can see that this slide were made only 2 days ago, and there was written 25,000, but now it's already 40,000. And I maybe shouldn't say this as the chairperson of Helsinki City Council, but I'm so happy that also the nurses in Helsinki are ready to strike, since if the nurses and caregivers don't fight now and don't get results now, I don't know when it will happen. I strongly feel that now is the momentum for our nurses and our caregivers to actually get their value also written in their paycheck. So I'm strongly supporting this strike. I know that people don't like it that I'm so for the strike, but I really don't care. I think it's a question of equality, and I strongly hope that our caregivers and our nurses will be successful in the negotiations, and that they will get a proper raise to their salary. So this is something that I would like to end my presentation, and thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fatim. That was really great and interesting and inspiring for all of us. So now we will have some comments from more panelists. 2 panelists will join us. So a warm welcome to Tatjana Latinovic, who is the president of the Icelandic Women's Rights Association and the first immigrant to be elected chair of this association since its founding in 1907. And Tatjana is a founding member and former chairwoman of WOMEN, Women in Iceland, an NGO for immigrant women, a former board member of the Icelandic Women's Shelter from 2004 until 2012. And Tatjana is the outgoing chair of the Immigration Council at the Ministry of Welfare. A warm welcome to you, Tatjana, and we look forward to your comments. And Tatjana and everyone else is joined by Lise Johansen, the director of the Women's Council in Denmark. And the Women's Council Denmark is an umbrella for 48 organizations, and among them unions representing workers and professionals in female-dominated sectors. And this Women's Council Denmark works for gender equality, equal pay, and pay equity, the topics that we are discussing today. And at the moment, it has great hopes, apparently, for a new committee that has been established to look at pay inequalities in the public sector that we already heard about. So a warm welcome to Tatjana and Lise, and we will now have comments from both of you, and then I'll give a chance for the speakers to respond as well, and we can open for questions from the audience. Tatjana, please.
Yeah, start. Okay. Thank you, and thank you very much for meeting here. And I echo what Sonia had said. I hope that we will next year meet in person. But this is a great initiative, and really thank everyone for participating. So, and thank you for your presentations. And it really shows us how similar the situation is in this part of the world that is considered to be a feminist and equality paradise, isn't it? So, but then we still have a lot to do. The equality is a moving target and always will be, as the societies change and become more and more conscious of the diversity within them that has always existed, I think, but also is becoming more. And I obviously am most familiar with diversity on the basis of origin, as you might have guessed. But I believe that there are commonalities in all fights for equality that can be used and adapted to achieve same goals for various groups. So, but what we need to be aware of is we need to be aware of the issues and recognize them and make sure that every action plan for gender equality is intersectional. So I really like the efforts of Icelandic government and PSRB and what Sonia has been telling about the pay equity, and I just wanted to give a little bit of insight into the situation in Iceland. So when it comes to immigrant participation in the labor market and sector, so right now there are around 60% of Icelandic population is immigrants, is people that have moved here, and it's quite young and vibrant. The situation, you know, young people are coming, and in the public discourse, immigrants are mostly considered a resource whose main purpose for being in Iceland is to drive the country's economic growth. So we need people to work in the care sector, in others as well. So as it stands now, Sonia has mentioned that the labor market is very gender segregated, but my feeling, not only my feeling, but I know from statistics, is that it is also becoming more and more segregated on the basis of origin, with foreign workers occupying majority of certain sectors, such as service jobs in care and cleaning, tourism, fish processing industry, and etc. So I think that if we are talking about pay equity and equality, we need to take into consideration that dimension. Iceland has over the years developed various tools, and it's really doing great, like gender gap analysis, equal pay standard, and process. So I would like to see, now I'm coming to my wish list, I hope it's okay. I would like to see that these tools and processes further developed to capture discrimination on other levels. Because if we do not do that, if the tools do not develop in line with the changes in the society, we will not only stagnate inequality, but the situation will really worsen. And this means also gender equality. So I'd like to hear from you from Denmark and from Finland as well, if this is the situation in your countries as well, and whether people are at all aware of that. Back in 2019, Statistics Iceland did the first, in cooperation with Immigrant Council, we did the first analysis of pay gap by background, which was very interesting. It was based on the gender pay gap analysis, and obviously the tool needs to be developed more, but the results showed that immigrants have generally lower earnings than Icelanders. And not only that, it was estimated immigrants had an average almost 8% lower earnings. But not only that, but it also mattered where the immigrants came from. So the immigrants from Nordic countries, the difference was less than if you come from countries further away from this paradise of ours. So, and in occupations for migrant workers, that in occupations where migrant people of foreign origins are in majority, the pay gap was generally greater, up to 16%. So this shows that, you know, we do have the tools, we need to improve them, but I think they show very interesting picture, and if we do not use them, we do not see the whole picture at all. Thank you.
Thank you, Tatiana. Lise, please.
Yeah, hi everyone, and good morning from New York. I'm participating in the Commission on the Status of Women, actually this topic, the care crisis, is a huge topic here in New York. The care crisis and the climate crisis. The way that we have always undervalued and exploited women's labor force, but also the way we have undervalued natural resources. These themes are the year's discussion, where we are trying to link gender equality and climate. And therefore it's so interesting to hear from all of you, and what is happening in the Nordic countries, because this is, as Astrid said, it's a tipping point. We have to make justice now, both for the climate, but also for care. So if not the Nordic countries, who would take the lead here? So I think this debate has to go on. I think we have to also, with our feminist to-do list, commit ourselves to say we will take the lead on this, trying to find some solutions for the care crisis and at the same time the climate crisis.
Thank you, Lise. So now we open this up a bit, but first by going back to our speakers. If you'd like to respond, especially Tatiana has posed a very direct question about intersectionality, intersecting axes of inequality, and how they could be accounted for, both maybe in the kind of the women's movements, social movement campaigns, in state policy for pay equity. And also we also heard from the social partners, trade unions in the first presentation. So I think it's really, at least I'm burning to hear some answers to that question. And then we have the second point from Lisa about kind of broader questions about social justice and the care crisis, which has been covered really well in the presentations. So I invite everyone to think of questions while our speakers respond to this. And we'll go in the order as we started, because Sonia has been now waiting and listening. So Sonia, perhaps you can start, and then we go to Astrid and then to Fatim.
Thank you. Well, yes, to start off, maybe on Tatiana's question, I mean, I think it is of great importance. I think I say correctly that that when it comes to statistics, there are 18% of the women that are working in the labor market come from another country. So even though kind of the change has been quite, well, a little more rapid and maybe later on than in the other Nordic countries, I think I mean, the time has come that we have to make some changes. And also what is really bothers me is the fact that, I mean, the majority of the work that people who are moving to Iceland are doing are jobs that Icelanders won't do. So there needs to be a change in that, and there needs to be like a change of how you evaluate these jobs. I don't have the solutions, but I think that we have to take like a big round table of all those who could have an impact or have ideas and take this discussion further and make up some proposals. I think, I mean, this term or this discussion about the care crisis, I think it's an important one. I think it was a Finnish doctor of sociology, maybe you can help me out, that has written a lot. She's very radical, and she says kind of the Nordic countries, they could not have provided the welfare or the status of the welfare if it wouldn't be for the, well, how should I put it mildly? She's so radical. I'm trying to say her the correct words from her, but kind of on the backs of the women that are being paid very poorly. And I think we have to consider that as well, because here in Iceland, we can also see that the majority of the women that are then losing the ability to work, becoming sick or yeah, well, just losing the power to work is because of the work that they're doing. So the work environment is making them sick for a short amount of time or for the longer period, for an indefinite amount of time. And is that the way forward? For us, I think we have to also take that into consideration. And we have Swedish research that shows that the majority of the sick leave is taken by women, and it isn't based on the sex, it's based on the working circumstances and how the jobs are being organized. And so it's not just the pay, it's also that you have to run way too fast and the pressure is too much. I think it was really interesting to see the time use survey. We have an old one in Iceland, which is kind of more, you have hints from it. It wasn't that vast, but what we could see there was that people were spending less time on things at home than they were before. And the researcher, they kind of, because it's hints, they said maybe one of the reasons that we have, I have an iRobot here at home, which vacuums my floors, and that the technology should be helping. So it's really interesting to hear this fact from you. And I wonder also, because we know that we're talking about the welfare system again, when they're trying to kind of decrease the fundings, the burden goes over to the women again. So not just the burden of the children or the responsibility, to put it in a better way, but also of the older relatives. So maybe that is also a factor that we have to look into. Yeah, I'm going to stop here so more can join the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonia. So moving on to, I'm trying to think which Finnish sociologists you might mean. I can propose many names to the chat box who might argue this way. So let's see if one of them is correct. But let's hear from Astrid, please.
Yeah, first of all, Tatjana, I think you are absolutely right that we have to think intersectionality into our work. I think but it's also a complicated thing to do. It's a very important thing to do, but it's also complicated because, as you pointed out yourself, immigrants are not just immigrants. We have immigrants from Germany who are get kind of the same conditions as the Danes, and then we have Filipinos coming to Denmark who primarily end up working as au pairs, and they are not even recognized as workers, they work a full-time week or more, providing care in the home of Danish family, but formally they are not recognized as workers and do not have the same rights as other workers in Denmark. They are not they are put under a whole other rule set because they do not get this recognition. So there's you really also have to think intersectionality when you talk about immigrants. But I think it's a very important point and something we also constantly have to work with. I think this as a care crisis, it's so uplifting to hear you that you are talking about it in New York. But at the same time, I think it's also very sad that even in the Nordic countries, which have been described as female friendly and so on, are hit so hard by the care crisis because it really speaks about the problem and also what have been ignored over time. And I think here in Denmark, it is not like we haven't known that we would need more nurses and midwives and pedagogues, and we were coming into this crisis, but it's like the government has just ignored it for years and years and years. And still we are seeing it ignored by the government. Right now we are having these discussions about pay equality. And suddenly we are seeing discussion where they say, maybe it's not about pay, maybe it's about public service motivation, which is this new public management word. So you just have to have a public, install all your workers with public service motivations, and then we have solved the care crisis. And it's that we are still having these discussions, I think is kind of horrible. So yeah, on one hand, I'm very hopeful that we are at a tipping point and we can do something better. But at the same time, I'm also thinking we are up against some strong interests that want to just put this as a topic away. And I think a short example, and then I will give the word to Fatim. But we have just decided in Denmark that we will use more money on our military due to the situation in Ukraine. And maybe that is reasonable enough, but it was decided in a day that we would really doubled our budget on military. And it toppled a lot of economic we just used a lot of money that people said we don't have on military. But when people wanted to use that on welfare or childcare or then it wasn't possible, then the money didn't exist. And I just think it's so interesting that you can easily find a lot of money, and really, really a lot of money to military in a day. But we have struggled to get more money for 20 years to welfare, and we haven't gotten it yet. And I just think that says something about the status of care and welfare in a state.
Thank you. Good point, Astrid. Fatim, over to you.
Thank you. I see this as an extremely complicated. I don't think there's an easy solution, but something that Sonja just said about how a lot of immigrant workers are working in these fields, and I also see that the same discussion is going on in Finland, where people say that these jobs are jobs that Finns don't want to do themselves. So there's discussion that we should get more workers from different countries, and also there's these programs to basically ship in employees from countries with a different economic level to Finland to work. And one of the most horrific comment I heard during this war in Ukraine that Russia started was that someone said to me, a politician actually said in an off-the-record meeting that hey, but that's good. We will get a lot of employees in Finland to be nurses and to our fields. There's a silver lining, and it kind of describes the racistic and horrible attitude inside our quite financially comfortable society, is where many people see people from other countries as basically just labor that we can take and just put in our fields and put in our hospitals, and that's the way we solve the crisis. And that is not the way to solve the crisis. The way to solve the crisis is to give people a better pay, so that more people actually find the work interesting and motivating. I think that is the way to solving it. But then we go to the question on how to get more money and how to get more people to work. Since when you look at the Finnish, when you look at our population, we have a lot of old people and not enough people in the labor force, and not enough young people, meaning that there is a true demand for more people for new Finns to arrive and and we should more welcome these people. But from my perspective, we should not welcome these people only to do the jobs that the proper white Finnish people don't want to do. So I find a lot of kind of racism in the way how we speak about immigrants and how we speak about the care work that needs to be done. But then but my kind of solution to all of this is the pay situation. But I truly don't believe that it will change unless the nurses and the caretakers will actually go on strike, and will put their foot down and say that it is not going to happen. Since we have seen all these male-dominated fields of labor going on strike and putting their foot down and stopping the shipping industry and all of this so many times. But I'm now 35 and I have never ever seen female-dominated fields of labor market going on a big strike. It has not happened. So I kind of feel that as feminists, we have to do it ourselves. And if the Finnish nurses don't do it themselves, it's not going to happen. But I trust their chairperson at the moment. I think she has the duties to do the fight. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So now it's the moment to speak or to post questions in the chat box if you wish. If not, I'm already starting asking our speakers and panelists for the feminist to-do list, which we are gonna gather now in the end. We've already had some suggestions here and there, but I'm just gonna ask everyone to say them one more time so that we have some take-home messages for everyone. And we will have a Padlet for that. The screen will be shared, so you're gonna see them typed up. So actually, if it's okay, I'm going to start with you, Tatiana, because you had something very clear already in your mind. So maybe you can repeat that. And then we go over to Lise, and then we again do the speakers in the order that we had.
Sure,
so.
Yeah. I will do that, and I'm sorry if I pose the complicated questions. I don't have answers for them, but I do believe that feminists together with pressuring can achieve something. So my wish list would be that every action plan for gender equality is intersectional.
Yes, that's very clear. We wait for it to appear on the feminist to-do list. Clear, and then as we heard from Astrid, creates kind of complexities, but I think we all agree that they need to be overcome, and it has to be doable. And I'm of course following all of this with great interest as a social scientist or an academic who might have a role to play in terms of the concepts kind of used in these processes. Lise, please.
Yes, I would very much like to put pay equity and hopefully this new Icelandic model to be spread out in all of Scandinavia and the rest of the world.
Thank you. Over to Sonia.
Well, mine, of course, is pay equity now, but I think we have to add to it. So maybe we should say health and safety for all. To speak a little bit
Yes.
towards the Me Too movement as well. Is it health and security maybe?
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's a good point as well. Like very much extending to the kind of the conditions, the working conditions as well, broader debates. So then, Astrid.
I would like to say hold the politicians accountable also, because I think that the politicians in Denmark and probably also in other countries have been opting out of the care crisis for too long. So hold them responsible. Hold politicians responsible. Could that be a point?
Absolutely. And I think a lot of people have a role in that, in holding them accountable, like both the kind of the civil society and everyone who votes, all the citizens, all the way to academics. So thank you for that, Astrid. Fatim?
Well, my answer would maybe be taking in consideration the situation in which we live is negotiate, strike, and renegotiate.
Very nice. We cover a lot. And then maybe as a chair, when I listen to all of this, kind of you speak from very different directions. So just adding to that, maybe the point about using knowledge, using concepts, developing those as well, because they can be very helpful, but also solidarity. I think it's behind the intersectionality, kind of trade unions, women's rights organizations, solidarity within and across, cooperation, and forging the links, especially in times like this that we have mentioned, COVID, Putin's war on Ukraine, and so on. So I think these are some of the take-home messages for me as well that have come very strongly through from what you have said. So there you see the Padlet. I'm at least gonna take a picture of it as something to remember, and maybe also to share in social media or in our networks. So I see no further comments. When we were organizing this, we very much agreed that around an hour, a bit over, is good for a Zoom event. as we are all very sorry that we can't be in New York live. So this is kind of the good time span that we can concentrate in front of our laptops. So I'm gonna thank everyone very strongly. Ruth has appeared there, so thank you also for the real organizers behind this. Ruth, do you want to say something as a final word? From Iceland, microphone is closed. I see you speaking, but yes.
Yes, sorry.
No worries.
Thank you so much, everyone, for today. We definitely had great discussions, and now we have a to-do list that we will share both on our social media, and we'll send everyone who signed up on Eventbrite, we'll send both the recording, the slides, and the to-do list. Yeah, so thank you again, everyone, and looking forward to implementing this to-do list.
Thank you, and wishing everyone really good days wherever you are.
Thank you so much.